Right, there we go. Just give me a nudge.
Yep, off you go.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. It's Karen Kendrick here from the CWU, and welcome to this evening that we're going to spend this session now with Gill Rossini. We want this to be a safe space for you, so you don't have to turn cameras on. We are on a webinar anyway as well, so it will be recorded so that other people can view this later. And as you can see, we've got our signers on this evening, so welcome to Jeremy, and later on we'll see Alison as well. So they'll be there for us for those of you who may have difficulty hearing. Any questions that you have, if you put them in the anonymous, you can show them as anonymous and put them in the box, in the question and answer box, and we will hopefully get to that stage where we can be asking Gill a few questions after her presentation. So just to give you a bit of introduction, you know, it's great to, well, I say it's great to see you all, but obviously you have got your cameras off so I can see all my colleagues here. Now, the Northwest region is really proactive in what we do regarding equality, and we're embracing the CWU strategy to embed equality in everything we do. We've got a really strong leads team in the Northwest, led by the Regional Secretary, Carl Webb, who I know is on here tonight, supporting us as he usually does. And we all work together very progressively and creatively to share our passion for equality with you, which is what has brought us to tonight. So the first person I'm going to introduce is Sheila, who has actually organised this full event. And Sheila will just give us a short wave there, and she will come in later on and close the event for us. So Sheila is the Northwest Regional Women's Lead, and she has organised this while still working full-time for Royal Mail on delivery. Sheila's first role within the union was as a branch equality officer, and she still holds that position, as well as that of the branch women's officer. She then took on the new regional women's lead role under the redesign of the CWU, and she's developing and challenging herself and showing us all new ways to move our equality agenda forward. The recent Women of Today events organised by Sheila are all available to watch on the CWU's Northwest Regional website, where you'll see another session that we had with our speaker Gill tonight, when we were looking at the history of some of the history of women in Liverpool. So our special guest tonight is Gill Rossini. Gill is a professional historian. She's a writer and a lecturer who specialises in researching the lives of the marginalised, the poor, and those who in the past were regarded as transgressive in their behaviour. She attributes her passion for the past to childhood holidays with her parents, and I can relate to that because I did as well. Touring the ancient and historic sites of Britain and Europe, and her love of history shows no sign of abating. Gill has written books about the history of adoption, same-sex relationships in history, and a women's history of Liverpool, as I mentioned before. And she's currently working on two major projects: a companion volume to the adoption history, focusing more closely on researching adoptions, and also a historical mystery set in the aftermath of the Glendale Revolution, which was the Crofters' revolt against oppression by their landlords, and that was in the 1880s. So Gill will be sharing some slides with us tonight and some links, and those will be available to anybody who wants to see them later on request. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to our guest tonight, Gill, and we can all see what Gill's got to say to us this evening. So looking forward to this. Thank you, Gill.
Oh, there we are. Can you hear me? Good. I should point out to everybody that's been kind enough to drop by today. Thank you for that. As I do on occasion, have a bit of bother with the sound on my laptop. So I've asked Karen to wave at me frantically if she can't hear me. So hopefully it will go smoothly. Most of the time it's all right, but sometimes it isn't. And thank you very much to everybody at CWU, particularly Sheila, and also Karen and everybody else who's been generous enough to invite me along to talk to you. And thank you to all of you out there who are listening at the moment. whether you're doing so on the recording or whether you are here tonight with us. I do have a number of slides to show you, but it's going to be more of a sort of exploration really, rather than static fact regurgitation of what is available at the moment in the way of support for people within the LGBTQI community reaching out to each other. Because one of the things I've noticed as a gay woman is that we tend to be fed nowadays the idea that there is no need for specialised support for individual groups anymore. And I've been reflecting on this, particularly because it made me think I'd almost been conditioned to think by outside factors that, well, what on earth am I going to say in this talk? I've said I'll do this talk on reaching out, but of course, we don't need anything like that anymore, so there won't be a lot to say. In actual fact, there is a huge amount out there in the way of support within the queer community and support beyond that as well for the queer community. And that's what I've focused on today. And, you know, that raises the question, if one body of opinion is saying you don't need that anymore, but actually there does seem to be a strong and sometimes urgent need for support for individual minority groups, then there is a disparity there. And that would be something that I think at some point somebody should explore. So I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to go straight into having a look at some of the issues around this, and then we'll have a look at we'll sample some of the agencies that are available to help queer people, primarily across the northwest of England. Well, some of these are national organisations. So, Karen, am I okay to share screen now? I've got the power. Right. Okay,
Yeah, you should have the power, Jill.
That's always good.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I'm hoping everybody can see this. Oh, sorry, wrong thing. There we go. Right. So there we are. So, as I say, this is a very, very broad overview. In fact, almost probably sampling of what's out there, because I was really surprised at how much is still out there, how much is needed. And therefore, what I've really tried to do is give you some examples, sort of top down, of big organisations, national organisations that have a local input, down to local organisations striving away to help queer people in their own local communities. And I should point out that because this is only a sampling, I've done my best to include as many sections within the queer community as I can. But please don't be offended if your particular special interest group or section is not specifically mentioned. It's not deliberate, it's simply that in the time available, you know, I just can't do everything. But from the stuff I'm going to show you, you will be able to signpost from there to all sorts of other things. So in that sense, everybody is actually included. So I just wanted to reflect, first of all, very briefly on why we do need these group-specific support services. Now, clearly we're here talking about the LGBTQI community, but, you know, we could be talking about particular ethnic groups. We could be talking about people in specific working roles, which is what the CWU is all about. You know, why do we have to have some sort of special targeted support? Aren't we all supposed to be able to just help each other on an everyday basis? And, you know, we've got the NHS, we've got social services, we've got our GPs, we've got, you know, and mental health services and everything else. Why isn't that enough? And I think there's all sorts of reasons for that. And it's a very big topic you could spend hours discussing, to be honest. But I've just put one or 2 points here that I think are of interest. First of all, you can have all the legislation in the world, but that is not necessarily going to change people. it does not change people's hearts and minds. So you can have an act of parliament that says, relating to hate crime, for instance, something like that. But until that is embedded in people's psyche, until they accept, they actually feel that to commit those hate crimes is a bad thing and that they shouldn't do it, and they actually feel goodwill towards the people that at one point they may not have felt goodwill towards, then you need some sort of backup support for people who could be vulnerable. And support is not universal in its coverage. And in a rural area, in a very isolated area, or somebody who feels isolated within a family, within a smaller community, whatever that might be, you're still going to have something that reaches out to those people, or something that is there and says, look, we are here for you. All you've got to do is sort of put your hand up and we are there for you, in a way that the bigger organisations, wonderful though they are, like social services, the police, NHS, they simply can't do that in a specifically targeted way. So they can't reach everybody in a way that is needed. And I also think there's issues around understanding as well. And with the best will in the world, we're just human, all of us, and we cannot all have an in-depth, specialised understanding of a specific individual's need within their own circumstances. So it's a really good thing for postal workers to have the CWU with that understanding, with that particular focus on that particular way of working around the issues involved in it, so that they can be there to offer that very, very targeted support, understanding, and so on. And I think people need that as well. People need to know that somebody has that innate understanding of them. It might be because there is a problem. It might be because they are suffering some form of negativity in their lives, be it abuse, targeting, even if it's verbal or whatever it is, whether there's a health issue that they want support with, mental health, anything like that. It's good to have somebody who has a closer appreciation of what you're going through and what you need. And also to be able to meet people in your position as well. People who have that closer understanding, even if it's a social thing, or even if you are perhaps looking to meet a future life partner, whatever it is. To be with people who have a specific and innate empathy and understanding for who you are. And I think that's very important for anybody in any special interest group, specific group, that they are able to meet in a safe space with people who have that connection with them. And if you're going to do that, that then offers the opportunity to support and volunteer in a more focused and organised way with the support of some particular organisation. And to share life experiences. I don't think that the way society is structured at the moment, it is possible to expect central governments or even local government to a degree to have the money, the facilities, the understanding, the empathy to do that. So to people who might say, and I'm sure it's not you guys out there, but some people in society who say, you don't need LGBT organisations anymore. What do you need them for? Everybody's all right. Everybody's fine with it now. Sadly, unfortunately, that isn't the case. And you do need specific organisations for specific issues. That, as you might guess, is a picture of Canal Street during Pride. So I thought I'd be a bit cheeky actually. And I thought to myself, seeing as I'm looking at organisations that support queer people in the queer community, I'd start top down. So I thought to myself, right, I'm going to pretend that I'm thinking of applying for a job where the CWU would be the trade union that I would join. And I wonder if, as a gay person, they would have my back, if they would support me. And I was thinking as well of people who actually might not be out yet, who are frightened to come out for whatever reason, or prefer to be very discreet about their sexuality or gender identity. So I went on a rummage and to see what I could find, because as an outsider, a friendly observer, I wasn't quite sure exactly what you'd been up to recently, although I assumed it was all very good. So obviously, when rooting about on the CWU website, was very pleased to see pages like this. And you know, if I was a closeted gay person looking to work in the environment that you support people in, to see something like this, the CWU promotes a positive agenda around LGBT plus issues. That would gladden my heart, because I would think, fantastic, they are going to be on my side, and that is great. And also, reading down the page, you've got a variety of different posters, leaflets, even one for people coming out, so that it kind of gives you an umbrella of support. And also things like no place for homophobia. You know, that would make me think, I think I'll be all right if I worked in this organisation, because this trade union would be there for me. And that's very encouraging. So I was really pleased to see you've got that on your website. I don't think there's much further down. No, there isn't. But some fantastic literature there. And it would be great from my point of view to see that built on. Oh, God, sorry, again, wrong one. And then I came across things like this. Now, this is, well, very old, but it was nice to see that you've got a history of supporting people in the LGBTQI community, and that you've actually had awareness events, that you've had training events, that there has been an effort made to make people aware of the issues around being in the queer community, and that you are there to support them. That's quite an old link, obviously, and my assumption would be, if I was thinking of joining the union, that things are ongoing, and clearly they are, because we're sat here today, so that's fantastic. And then I thought, well, you know, it's part of the TUC, let's just sort of take it a bit bigger and just see what the TUC has been doing, because, you know, as an interested observer, you don't really hear much about what the trade unions are doing in the mainstream media. We won't go into the whys and wherefores of that, but you don't. And so you've actually got to go out looking for the information. And, you know, significant reports like this, which is not too old, are very encouraging to people like me. And it does make you feel not exactly cherished, but it makes you feel valued, that people care about how you are being treated. And it gives a parity as well, because I know that over issues like women, you know, ethnicity, religion, and everything else, the TUC will be there for everybody to make sure that everybody is treated on an equal level. And it's always good to be on that platform with everybody else. So that was very pleasing for somebody who was just, you know, having a bit of a tootle about on the internet. So hats off to you for that. This lovely picture is from the CWU store. It's actually not the Northwest. I'm sorry to say, I couldn't find one for the Northwest, but it's from one of the Pride stores in the northeast of England. It's a fab picture. So I thought I would have a look at one or two of the bigger organisations first of all. And you've probably heard of Stonewall, because they're iconic. Some people are bi, some people are gay, some people are lesbian, some people are trans. Get over it. Publicity campaign is quite well known now. And Stonewall, if you don't know it, is the national organisation that is basically in a sense, the political arm of the queer community. It's essentially there to lobby parliaments, to do the big hitting, if you like. You know, it was very instrumental in working with the Labour government in pushing forward civil partnerships, marriage equality, that sort of thing. It's been very involved in the Schools Out campaign and LGBT History Month, which were interconnected in a way because they were created by the same person, but they're involved in all those big campaigns to get the word out there that it is not acceptable to see queer people as different to anybody else, and that your choice of partner actually has got nothing to do with anybody else, so just get over it. And I think if you were looking for information on the political status of the LGBTQI community, if you wanted to see what big campaigns they're involved in at the moment, then their website is the one to have a look at, because it's national. You know, it's a big thing, and there you go, straight away, straight between the eyes. This is one of their latest campaigns to push the governments to do something about conversion therapy not being illegal in this country at the moment. So that's the sort of big hitting campaign that they are involved in. They're the ones with the influence, if you like. They have the ear of politicians and other important lobby groups. So you can volunteer at various branches for that and so forth. But essentially, it is a nationwide, what shall we say, senior campaigner for the queer community. Very important. And they've been involved, as I say, in lots of other things as well. So, for instance, we've got their support for young people in schools and colleges, not just students in schools and colleges who are exploring their sexuality, who identify in a specific way, but also teachers as well, you know, alongside the teaching unions. So Stonewall gets involved with all sorts of other, for all I know, it could be involved with the CWU. I don't know. I'm absolutely certain it has strong connections to the TUC. So you know, you can look through all of these things and see what it is they are doing. And you know, there's every group of people has got children and young people in it, and a percentage of those, simply by the law of probability, are going to be LGBTQI. And obviously, workplaces. So their tagline for this is creating inclusive workplaces. And, you know, that is a tagline that you could just as easily transfer directly to yourselves as union members to the TUC, to any union. But one would hope also that even in places that do not have connections with the trades union, that this would also be something they would want to be taking on board. So I think the advantage of something like Stonewall is that whereas it can work closely with organisations such as yourselves, it can also go into spaces where unions are not represented. So it can do work maybe ahead of you guys in order to start that process of making workplaces safe and inclusive for everybody. And, you know, they will deal with everything from inappropriate language, sexual harassment, anything at all that is going to make queer people feel uncomfortable, threatened, not valued. So I definitely recommend that if you are interested in what is happening in the LGBTQI community, that you start with Stonewall and just get the bigger picture of what the key issues are that are facing the community at the moment. And that will give you an idea in a trickle down way of what is affecting people in your local area. So this is probably one that is going to be more relevant to those of us in the Northwest. And this is the LGBT Foundation. Used to be the Lesbian and Gay Foundation, but now thankfully has a much more inclusive public persona now. And it used to be based until recently, I forget the name of the street, but just at the back of Canal Street in Manchester. And they've recently, was it last summer, closed their premises, and I believe they're homeless at the moment. So I'm not quite sure what's happening to them, but who knows what's happening anyway over the lockdown and what's going to come out of the situation we're in right now with COVID. But if you wanted to get involved, certainly in the Greater Manchester area and the wider Northwest, in terms of networking with the LGBTQI community, if you wanted to know what was happening, if you wanted advice, if you perhaps were having an event and wanted speakers, if you wanted to make contact on behalf of a member who perhaps wanted counselling or something like that, then this should be your go-to organisation. They're working remotely at the moment. Just because they don't have active premises doesn't mean that they are not functioning. They certainly are. And branches of it are actually going to be out and about again in April. I'll come back to that in a minute. But this is a very, very rough summary of the huge amount of work that the foundation does. It's very professional. It's got lots of volunteers. It does have a quorum of paid staff as well, permanent staff. So it's got that stability. And it's done some amazing work over the years. One of their key functions, and I think this is actually probably how it started originally, was to offer sexual health advice and support to specifically originally gay men, because they're based in the village. And, you know, they can offer all sorts of things like sexual health testing, counselling. They've got loads and loads of different advice booklets and literature, some of which are available on the website as PDFs for people who are struggling in any way, whatever their sexuality or gender identity. They can offer talking therapies, although I believe the waiting list is quite long, but they can also signpost you to other people. They have social groups they can befriend, socialise. They can have a virtual cup of tea with you at the moment and a chat on the phone. They support groups that tend to be a little bit marginalised in the queer community. So elders of the community, people who are perhaps of retirement age or older. I noticed on the website yesterday that they're actually doing some pioneering work around LGBT people with dementia. And that is something I think that is quite new. They sponsor, conduct and promote research, had all sorts of different projects that they've had up and running. They support people in a self-help way. So they've got that wonderful group, Queers Without Beers, for people who are looking to cut down on their alcohol consumption or cut it out completely. And they have a helpline. And I've done the training for the helpline, admittedly a long time ago, and it is very thorough and professional. And I noticed that over the lockdown, they have extended the period of time that the helpline is open, which is fantastic. So it is more accessible for people who are struggling in whatever way during the pandemic. And they do train and manage their volunteers in a very efficient way. And they have volunteers in all these areas. So there's always an opportunity to get involved. And clearly, I should say right at the very beginning, you know, this is not just, it's not just a case of, you know, this is our game and you can't play if you're an ally. All are welcome. You know, everybody is in it together. So, for instance, when my son, who does not identify as LGBTQI, was thinking of joining a choir, he was contemplating joining the Manchester Gay and Lesbian Chorus. And he got in touch with them and he said, you know, I'm not, but my mum is, so can I join? And they said, we don't care, anybody, absolutely fantastic. So it's not, you know, a closed club or anything like that. Everybody is embraced. Oh, hold on a minute. I should have had a look at their website. Just one sec. There we are. So this is what it looks like, and I consider this to be a safe space because look down here. See that? You know, I've spoken to people on the phone, and they've been at home with family who don't know anything about their LGBTQ identity, and they've just suddenly shut the call down very, very quickly because somebody has walked into the room. And that's very, very stressful for people. It's also stressful for people if somebody comes up behind you when you're looking at your computer, your phone, your tablet, and says, well, what's that you're looking at there? LGBT what? So with that button, you can very quickly get out of the site, and that gives you a little bit of privacy and discretion. Right up at the top here, you know, helpline numbers, which is fantastic. And they do all sorts of different things, as I say, and all these headings will be able to tell you what they do support with. And here's some of the stuff. Bring Dementia Out campaign, befriending the Rainbow Brew buddies. It's literally a phone call and a cup of tea for people who are struggling over the lockdown. Pride in Aging, Pride in Practice, that's to do with GPs and dental surgeries as well. You know, people have issues over that. Sexual health, substance abuse or misuse. It's for everybody and anybody. And it's also fun. You know, when it's Manchester Pride, I don't know what they're going to do this coming year because I believe Manchester Pride is running this year. Normally they throw open their doors and they offer tea and coffee and cake and all sorts of things for people who just want to sit down and to get away from all the frantic socialising of Pride. So they try and be a bit of something for all people. They've even got a lesbian knit and natter group. So they're really trying to include everybody. So, and again, I definitely recommend you have a look at that. One or two other things that they actually do. This is a picture of the Village Angels, and this is something that the community is reaching out to everybody with, because if you go to Manchester's Gay Village, and you may well have done this for a night out, and particularly at the weekend, it can be very noisy, it can be very drunk, it can get a bit chaotic, and people can get themselves into real situations. You know, they end up falling over and banging their heads, they end up feeling sick, sat outside a bar, they lose their phones, they have their wallets stolen, things like that. These are the Village Angels, and these are a group of incredibly dedicated volunteers who are managed by the foundation, who have shifts from about 9 in the evening through to about 3:30 in the morning. And they literally are angels. They go out and help people who get themselves in a situation over the weekend at Canal Street at night. And, you know, they're first aid trained. They now have PPE. That's an old picture. And they are going out again from the 12th of April for those venues that are starting to open, again, to help people. And, you know, we're still in the middle of a pandemic, and I think it's just amazing that they are going out there and they're going to be in pretty close contact still with people, trying to help them, sorting out the police, the ambulance, everything else, taking them to a safe space to recover, to chill down, to get a drink, whatever, clean up. And that is the sort of thing that the queer community is paying forward in order to allow them to help out. I'm just going to check the... Right. Can you hear me? All right, that's all right. I'd better check. So I'll just have a quick look at their website or web page. There we are. I'm sure they'll be very, very happy to have donations and support and volunteers. But just look at this. This is the sort of figures that are produced by the Angels. So they've interacted with 5,000 people in the last year. That's 3,300 volunteer hours they've given up. and they've helped 450 vulnerable service users supported in all sorts of ways. So these are people who really are in need of urgent, immediate support. And one of my dear friends is a volunteer for the Angels, and I've heard the sort of things that they get involved in, and it really is amazing. I do know, I'm afraid I couldn't do it. They've also got things like befriending services. So here's the Rainbow Brew Buddies, and you know, it literally is just for people who need to talk to somebody. You know, they have similar things at Age UK for older people in the community, but you know, people of any age can be vulnerable, can be lonely, can feel isolated, and you know, you don't have to go that far outside of Greater Manchester to find people from the queer community who are isolated in small rural communities, and it can be very, very lonely and sometimes dangerous. So the point being, the foundation, even though it is Manchester based, their helpline and that sort of thing is for everybody, and they're not going to turn anybody away, but they might be able to signpost you to something that is a bit closer to home and more accessible for you. And on the subject of rural areas, you know, the given is that a lot of minority communities are urban based, and that's quite true. You know, people like to be able to, as I said before, get together because they have that innate understanding of each other. But in rural communities, that is not the case, even today. And I tried to find some services that were specific to queer people in rural communities, and you know, I couldn't, and that worried me a little bit. So all I could find was these two links. So this is an article from Attitude magazine, which is about what it's like for a gay man to be in a rural farming community and the pressures on them. It makes the point that quite a few of them actually just do move away because they feel stifled. They're worried about what will happen to their families if they come out and so forth. So that's disappointing to read. And then there was this one, which is about LGBTQI youth and the efforts that people are going to try and support queer youth in rural communities. And you know, it seems to be pretty tough. And it's not that long ago that a friend of mine was working on the North Wales LGBT helpline, and people used to ring in tears saying, you know, I'm literally the only gay in the village and I feel so lonely and I don't know what to do. What am I going to do? And at the time, his only answer was, you're going to have to move to a city. Now, I would hope that rural services are improved from that point, but I can't find anything dedicated just to that. I would love there to be an LGBT foundation that focused on communities below a certain population, but I don't think it exists. So, this is the local equivalent of the foundation in a sense. And, you know, I can't look at every single community in the Northwest. So I thought what I'd do is I would just highlight one. And I'm highlighting this one because I know it, I know the people who run it. And it's not that old as a community organisation. But my goodness, they've done some amazing work. And it's thanks to just a few people from LGBT plus that Stockport has its own pride, and it's a wonderful family friendly pride compared to Manchester, which kind of has a different focus most of the time. And they've done an amazing job. And all around the Northwest, there are smaller sort of town community based groups who are doing amazing work with their innate and close understanding of their own community. They understand the services there, how they can be used for people. They're in close touch with each other. They're a family, really. And you know, there are lots like that, and lots of smaller prides going on normally all over the place. There's Bolton and Didsbury and Wythenshawe, you name it, they're everywhere. They're a good way for people who can't get to the big sort of standout touristy prides to mix and enjoy themselves. So they've got their own website now, and again, doing all sorts of things. And what you will notice with a lot of them is a very strong social media presence. That's really important because so many people use social media now. And, it's a fairly anonymous way for people to just have a peek and see what individual groups are doing. And I'm very pleased to say that in places like Stockport, certainly Stockport Council in particular, has been very generous in offering hosting space for LGBT History Month events, socials, that sort of thing. And that's the sort of relationship that a local group can build up with the local authority in a way that somebody like Stonewall or possibly even the foundation couldn't do. So you do need these much smaller, in a sense, more intimate groups at ground level in order to do that. And, look at trade union structure. You have got that trickle down as well. You need to have people on the ground who know exactly what's going on, who can use what's there for the benefit of the people around them. So on that subject, these are some of the partnerships that Stockport LGBT Plus are getting involved in. So there's a pub that they use a lot. They're very strongly connected to the Nexus Equality Hub, which is for diverse communities to mix and learn about each other. I was really pleased to see their strong connection with Disability Stockport, because everybody needs to be included. It doesn't matter what shape, size, or anything you are. People should be accepted, no matter what. And obviously, LGBT History Month, which is generally, as it says here, pretty much sponsored by Stockport Libraries and various other different groups that are involved. So, and also they're connected to the LGBT Foundation, Stockport Mind. Wonderful bridge building going on there of the sort that you need in order for people to understand each other. That's what we want. Now, this is my contribution to the services for queer youth. And the Albert Kennedy Trust is quite a famous organisation which concentrates on supporting and helping young queer people who, for whatever reason, are not able to live at home with their families. Quite often they have been thrown out or had to leave because of the adverse reaction to their coming out with some form of queer identity. And these are some of the comments from the website that I picked out. So, I lived in a village with hardly any buses and I just felt trapped. This is the rural isolation thing again. Supported by Albert Kennedy after facing rejection from her family. Ostracised by his community, Marcus came to Manchester to start a new life and escape isolation. So they offer good accommodation, they offer support with education, they will make sure you have decent clothes for job interviews, they offer counselling support, health support, they bring self-respect. It's a really important, quite powerful organisation. And alongside things like the LGBT Foundation, they are offering a specific service to specific subgroup within the queer community. Because one size doesn't fit all. So this is their website, and I don't spend too much time going through it, but it's definitely worth exploring because people of all ages need to be cherished and looked after, and it's a trope. Obviously, lots of people say it, But the younger generation, the young people in their mid to late teens going into mid-20s, are very, very important, and they've got to be looked after. You cannot have somebody's life ruined at that age and not try and put them back on their feet and give them support, because otherwise that could have an impact on decades of their future life. So it's not all about people who are upset. It's actually about sometimes people who are happy. And within the queer community in the Northwest, there are tons of things that LGBTQI people can do to meet up together, to have fun, to share a hobby. But not only that, within that, on probably a more informal basis, to support each other. Now, there's just so many organisations like this. I've just picked out a few that I've encountered along the way, really. And you might recognise some of them from if you've been to any of the gay prides in Manchester, or any of the others, in fact, that have been in parades and things like that. So, for instance, who has got the best title of all the social groups? It's got to be the Gay Gordons, obviously. They win the prize for that. So this is literally Scottish country dancing group. Actually, at the moment, I think it's all men, but it welcomes women as well, or people of any identity. And they quite often do. They have day schools when they can. They do demonstrations, and I think you can borrow them for weddings and bar mitzvahs if you want to. And they're usually at most of the local prides where there's room for them to dance. And it's a brotherhood, it's fitness, it's solidarity, it's fun, and it's looking after each other. And all these other things are a similar thing. So we've got the Outdoor Lads, which is for gay men to engage in all these different sporting activities. And I think that is actually probably a national organisation now, with links to groups abroad as well. But it does mean that you can socialise, be fit, and get out and about with people, again with that innate understanding of who you are as a person. So there's something for everybody. Line dancing, I won't go through all the links because I want to allow a bit of time for questions at the end if needed. But if you wanted to have a look at a whole list of what is available, this is a very good website. So if you at the CWU, if you don't already, have got football leagues and things like that, then I think you ought to get in touch with some of these guys in some of these LGBT sporting teams and maybe challenge them to a match or whatever it is sporting people do. I'm not very good at sport myself. So Pride Sports is a really useful website for anything to do with that. So you could, for instance, go on to Sport and Club Finder. There we are. So you can search on there for whatever it is you wanted and look at the number that's actually sort of Northwest Midlands area, 68 different organisations or teams. I'm going to take my life in my hands now and click on it and see what happens. Oh, there we are. So it does break it down into various different things. So it looks as though they've got every single sport you could imagine, I think. So that would be a useful website for you to look at if you have members who feel that they need an outlet other than maybe what you're offering within their own community. And you'd be amazed how many people don't think to look, and they assume that it's not going to be there, so they don't go and check to see if it is there. So if you are in a position of supporting an individual from the LGBTQI community within your union, sometimes you're going to have to maybe know more than that person in order to make sure they get what they need. And that's really why I put so many links into this presentation, so that you would then have access to these again. I'm not saying it's definitive, of course, but it's a start for you to start exploring what people need in the way of maybe you reaching out to them in order that they can be reached out to by something within the community. I couldn't really not mention the prides. You know, I don't know what's going to happen to the prides this year. I know that Sparkle, the trans weekend, has very sadly been cancelled because it's too much in the middle of the vaccination programme, and not enough people will be completely covered by then. I understand that Manchester Pride is planning to go ahead because it's August bank holiday, and they're assuming that the vaccination programme will be complete for all adults. I've no idea whether that's a good idea or not, but that's what they're planning to do. But if you are interested to see what is available in the Northwest, you could check a website like this. There are quite a few out there, or you could just Google on or go on Facebook and look for Facebook pages. And so this has got a list of what is going to happen and when. Now, Berry Pride on the 24th of April. I'm not even going to open the website, but I'm guessing that's going to be virtual events. So let's whiz down a bit. Blackpool Pride online only, by Pride.
I'm so sorry, Jill, but can we just sort of speed through a bit? It's just I'm just conscious of the time, and we have got a couple of questions that have come in for you.
Okay, right. Well, this is practically the last one, so I'll let you go through those links yourself if you want to. And well, that is the last slide actually. So there you go.
Oh, Jill, fantastic. I honestly, I could listen to you all night. It's just sorry that, you know, we do have a limited time period here. And I think, you know, from my point of view there, you know, everything you've done, I know it's concentrated on the Northwest, but there's been so much of the wider aspects of, you know, reaching out that's been there. And I think that the fact that you've actually gone into the resources and showed us and talked to us a little bit about it. And I think it's fascinating that you've looked at our own as well, you know, because it's always good to have reflection back.
Well, it's a bit cheeky, but I thought I'd try it.
Listen, you know, we like feedback. We absolutely, we love feedback. You know, I liked your reference very much to allies as well, because we all see ourselves as allies to our LGBT colleagues.
We're all in it together, aren't we?
Exactly. You know, and as much as though I won't profess to understand what journeys are like, it is so good to know there's an awful lot out there. And you know, for ourselves in the Northwest, we do Liverpool and Manchester Pride, but we do the little ones. We do Blackpool as well. I'm looking forward to doing Stockport. You know, it was one I wanted to go last year, and you know, it's only down the road from me. So
yeah, well, fingers crossed.
Yeah, there are a couple of questions that have come in. So okay. I just wanted to hit you with these couple, if that's okay, right? And you know, they come in anonymously, obviously, right? But just a couple of questions about, you know, something somebody's put on. You know, I'm a bi guy, but I'm not out. I can't come out in my community, but some of my close friends know. And what sort of support would be there for me?
There is a lot of support for people in the bisexual community now. And I think definitely the first port of call would be the LGBT Foundation website. Have a look at their bi services there. There's the helpline. There's also the general phone number to see what they are doing at the moment, because obviously it's difficult right now because we can't meet face to face. But it won't be long now before we can in some form. So my suggestion would be make contact with the foundation now, and they will signpost you possibly to a listening service, to a befriending service specifically for bi people, and take it from there. Because you know, reach out, make contact, and thank you for sharing what you've just said, whoever you are, and good luck.
Yeah. No, I mean, you know, this is what we want to do. We want to make sure we've got safe spaces, and we, you know, we start to have these conversations, and people realise that we are there as their allies. as well. I mean, another organisation that we've worked with quite closely in the Northwest, and I was just wondering if you'd ever had, you know, any connection with the Just a Ball Game organisation that's done to do with kicking out the homophobia within the football community, if you've come across them at all.
I've heard of it, but I've not had any contact with them. But that is really important, because there's been some terrible examples quite recently, hasn't there, of homophobia and racism in the world of football, and there is definitely a lot of work to do in that sporting community.
Well, I think we'd very much be looking forward to working with you more in the, you know, in the future. And it may be that we do, you know, things locally. As you know, we wanted to really do things face to face, and we intend to do that. You know, and it may be that, you know, in the future we tie something in, an LGBTQI event, you know, maybe at the same time as Manchester Pride, or, you know, the day before or something, and we get people together. So people like yourself, people like Lindsay England, who started the Just a Ball Game, you know, charity, right? And then we can carry on these conversations. And like you say, the more we're there and people can approach us, the better it is. So being conscious of time, thank you so much, Gill, because I say I could listen to you all night. And, you know, when you did your book review the other week, and as I said, that is available, by the way, on the CW Northwest website for anybody who wants to go and listen to that, as are the other Women of Today events, like I mentioned before. So thank you for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you for having me.
For coming on with us as well. And I'm looking forward to working with you again, Gill. So
well, take care, all of you.
That, just as a final note, right, I just wanted to pass over to Sheila, because Sheila's the person who's put all this together, and, you know, just for Sheila to close tonight. So over to Sheila.
Thank you, Karen. I'd just like to say thank you to Gill. I mean, again, I echo what Karen said. I could sit here all night and listen to you.
Well, you wouldn't want that.
Oh no, you're fantastic. You're full of useful information and signposting, and any feedback on our website from an outsider's point of view is more than welcome. You know, it helps out a lot. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Sheila.
I'd also like to thank our two signers, Alison and Jeremy, for helping us out tonight. And of course, Karen, thank you. Karen, you've done a fantastic job as always for sharing. Wouldn't know where I'd be without you. Thank you.
Oh, we have a good team, as I said in the
I was just going to say, you're a good team.
Yeah. And also I want to thank Fevzi for being our tech guru tonight as well.
Yes.
You know,
I was going to say, sitting there in the background, thank you very much, Fevzi.
Right. And just as the last minute, I've just heard there's 14,000 people on the Facebook Live tonight for our Count Me In campaign. So
wow, that's amazing.
Definitely getting up there. So
wow.
On that note, folks, good night. Take care of yourselves. Stay
Bye,
safe.
everyone.
We'll see you next time.
Good night.
Thank you for coming. Bye, everyone.
Bye.